As I approached the circle of firelight, I knew something was off. Something about the way the dusty beige unicorn was lying on his mat of straw, legs curled up under him. Some tenseness in his body language. But it wasn't until I stepped hoof into the light and got a good look, a warm hello dying on my lips, that I saw he was gagged and caught the glint of the flames against a few exposed links in the chains binding his hooves. Well, look-a here. Walked up all nice and pleasant, didn't she? A large earth pony emerged from the shadow of a nearby rock. His hooves clacked metallically against the rocky ground, shod in cruelly spiked pony shoes. Two more ponies slid out of hiding on opposite sides. One another earth pony, holding a shovel whose blade had been lethally sharpened. The other, a unicorn, whose glowing horn levitated towards me a short instrument of wood and metal, with two barrels. Each pony wore barding made of a thick hide. Much like Night, I had never seen a firearm before, save from pictures and books. But those books are more than explicit enough for me to recognize the mortal threat. The bound unicorn on the mat shook his head with a sad yet derisive look, and began trying to scrape the gag away with a forehoof, no longer making an effort to keep the chains secret. The three ponies menacing me spared him only the occasional glance. "Might as well trust herself up for us," the gun-wielding unicorn snickered. Then, addressing me, "You wouldn't mind that, would you?" Laughter. "And another unicorn, too. She'll fetch a pretty price, this one." Fetch a price? And from whom? The one holding the shovel spear in his mouth mumbled something incomprehensibly. Then, apparently deciding the gun was a sufficient deterrent, spat out his weapon and reiterated, "By the look at her! I think she's taking a bath!" I was suddenly and bizarrely aware of how filthy all four of these ponies were, and how foul they smelled. I managed to cover a gag with a sneeze. "What's going on?" I asked, of the emotions battling for supremacy in my head. Confusion had clawed its way to victory. The captive unicorn finally succeeded in pulling the filthy gag free. "They're slavers, you idiot!" Monterey Jack, the dirty beige unicorn with a dour expression and a cutie mark that looked like cheese, followed behind me as we trudged alongside our captors, walking on a broken path that once was a road. My legs were in chains, making walking difficult, and anything more speedy than a trot impossible. My pip-buck had stymied the slavers' efforts to bind my forelegs, eventually forcing them to chain me above the knees. Had the one with the shovel spear not been holding its point dangerously against my throat, the other two would have gotten a few hooves to tender places for their efforts. As it was, they made short work of me. I was not gagged, but Monterey had convinced me early that unnecessary chatter from the slaves-to-be would likely result in the loss of my tongue. Not that I had much to say to these brutes, anyways, aside from my repertoire of colorful metaphors. I didn't expect they would answer my questions, even if my tongue would survive the asking, and they were being chatty enough with each other to suffice. "Hate the fart," grumbled the earth pony through the spear clenched in his teeth. "Well then, if you could just learn to swim, we could take the long way, couldn't we?" suggested the unicorn with poisoned sweetness. "Hate fucking swiffy." By his smell, decidedly more pungent than the others. I guess he just hated water in general. "How about you two stop complaining and I'll let you sample one of the slaves before we get to the forest?" Their leader, the earth pony named Cracker, with the spiked shoes and a cutie mark that looked suspiciously like a whip, or maybe a snake, turned back towards Monterey and I with a filthy smile. I looked away, and they laughed. Through their disgusting dialogue, I could hear a liquid sound ahead, not like a burbling water fountain, but closer to a schlocking muck, and something else, a distant sound, getting closer. Music? Yes, music. Slightly tinny yet triumphant? Regal? Couldn't put my hoof on it exactly, what feeling the music was trying to inspire, but it was brightly out of place. Cracker took note of my expression and smirked. "You look like you've never heard that before. What, did you live your life in a stable? If you're hoping for the cavalry, that ain't it, Philly. That's just one of those sprite bots." The music cut out with a sharp twang. The unicorn slaver, sawed off, trotted ahead a bit, peering down the path ahead. Turning back to the rest of us, he smirked. "Think one of the relegators got it?" Cracker suggested it flew into some pony's booby trap. The other Earth pony suggested a mouthful of spear-mangled mumbling. The unicorn turned forward again, and the glow from his horn illuminated the machine. A metal ball about the size of a foal's head floating on 4 silently flapping wings, hovering silently in front of his face. No arcane science in this, I could tell. It was pure Earth pony engineering. "Fuck!" Sawed-Off leapt back a full pony's length in surprise, then swung a shotgun to bear and fired at the sprite bot. The sound was like a metal plate falling from the ceiling, and it echoed through the night-darkened hills. Sparks specked the metal ball as it was peppered with the scatter shot. It let out an electronic whine and darted into the darkness. The unicorn almost took off after it, but Cracker's voice cut the distance between them. "That's enough, Sawed-Off. Save your ammo." "Damn it. I hate when they pull that stealthy shit. It's a flying fucking radio. It's not supposed to sneak up on ponies." My ears were burning from the free flow of crude profanity, but I didn't mind. I was mulling over what I had just seen. "Idiot," Monterey Jack said under his breath. They heard that all the way in Ponyville. Unlike my fellow slave, I was pleased to have witnessed the unicorn firing off his weapon, because now I knew how it worked. "What kind of damn fool," Monterey grumbled, "announces his presence this close to raider territory." A river slithered across our path, its waters slipping and oozing along the banks, half stagnant. The water lapped and sucked at the supports of a bridge, making the wet sounds I had been hearing. Beyond the bridge lurked the shattered remains of a pre-war town. The bridge was a maze of barricades. Dark shadows of ponies moved about it. Briefly, I may have made the mistake of hoping for rescue, but my eyes were drawn to the spiked poles that lined the bridge, and the still rotting heads of decapitated ponies that adored them. I tasted bile. The sight was horrific. "Cager, stay here," Cracker said, finally putting a name to the spear-wielding slaver pony. "Sawed-Off, let's go hear what the toll is this time." Monterey Jack lowered his head and looked balefully towards the bridge. I moved closer to him, following his example, and hoping that I had positioned myself so Cager couldn't see the faint glow from my horn, as I slipped my screwdriver and a bobby pin from my stable utility barding. Like all of the slaver's equipments, the manacles on my legs were crude and of low quality. As Cracker and Sawed-Off argued with the bridge ponies, I focused on picking the first lock. I was rewarded with a soft click as it sprung open, releasing my pip-buck foreleg. The monocle fell to the ground with a little thump. "Huh?" Cager's ears had shot up, and now he moved around to see me. Swiftly, I cut the magic, dropping the screwdriver and bobby pin into the dirt, and hoped that in the darkness the slaver couldn't see the change in my change. "Woofu woofu," Cager growled dangerously. The nasty sharp edge of the shovel hovered inches from my eyes. Blam! Cager turned abruptly, the spear shovel slashing close enough to my face that I shrieked. The gunshot was from the bridge. It didn't sound like Sawed-Off's shotgun, but the second shot did. It took Cager a breath to recognize that crossing the bridge had become a bloody affair. Glowering back at us, his posture threatening, he started to say something. I suspect he was warning us to stay put, but I'll never know. His head exploded, showering me with gore. I stood there, eyes wide, shaking with shock. Blood, warm and sticky, ran down my forehead and into my left eye, oozed into my coat and mane. In the growing list of things I had not seen before this night, The death of another pony ranked at the top. I blinked, feeling the blood on my eyelid. Cager was dead, and I had Cager all over me. The urge to throw myself into the river was overwhelming, but I wouldn't get to it like this. Pushed by something more than determination now, my horn was once again glowing, and I began to unlock the rest of my monocles. I spared a glance towards the bridge, seeing Shadoff hunkering down beside one of the barricades as he magically pulled his shotgun open, stuffing in more ammo. 2 shots, I realized. One at the Sprite bot, one just now. 2 shots, and then reload. Closing the weapon, he levitated above the barricade and shot blindly into the violent milieu, spraying an already wounded raider pony with scattershot. The pony staggered and fell. Unfortunately for Sawed-Off, the raider behind him had a different kind of shotgun. One that was faster and not limited to 2 shots, but fired slugs which tore great holes in the unicorn slaver's body the moment he looked up to see the results of his efforts. I turned away, cringing from the nightmare playing out before me. I focused on the locks. I had freed myself, and was beginning to free Monterey when 2 raider ponies trotted off the bridge towards us, stepping over the battle-mutilated corpses of Cracker, Sawed-Off, and the raiders they had taken down with them. One of those approaching me was a unicorn raider, wielding the devastating combat shotgun. The other, an earth pony with a sledgehammer in his teeth. The unicorn was laughing, not the mean laugh of Cracker, but the crazed laugh that sent chills down the back of the neck.
Looks like we got ourselves some prizes.
The earth pony chortled behind the sledgehammer, as the unicorn looked us over appraisingly. The 2 were somehow even filthier than the slavers. The unicorn bore jagged scars across her face and flanks, one of them tearing through her cutie mark, several freshly bleeding. The earth pony was hairless and painfully burned over much of his left side. Both wore barding that looked ragged and cobbled together.
Help us?
I suggested weakly.
Oh, I'll help myself to you all right.
The unicorn reared up and gave me a kick, her hoof striking hard into my side. Pain exploded, and I dropped, gasping. Rearing up again, she brought her full weight down on me. I howled. Near me, Monterey let out a wet grunt of pain as the earth pony gave him a taste of her sledgehammer. Leaving me in a crying huddle, the unicorn also turned her attention to the still-chained Monterey. In moments, it became clear that they intended to beat and bludgeon him until he was another lifeless corpse, and probably not stop then.
Hold his leg out. I'm gonna shoot his hooves off.
The unicorn raider floated the combat shotgun a foot from Monterey's splayed left hind leg, the only one I freed from his manacle. Ignoring the pain, I leapt up, closing the distance and spinning as I gave a fierce back kick. My hooves connected with the shotgun, sending it flying. It clattered on the bridge beyond. A moment later, I was levitating the shovel spear at the 2 raider ponies who stood facing me, with gleeful expressions. 2 against 1, and both of them were experienced fighters. The one with the sledgehammer stepped closer, as if eager to see if hammer beat knife. Monterey was on her in an instant, throwing his forelegs over her head, pulling the chain between them across her neck. The sledgehammer fell from her mouth as the raider pony choked. The unicorn turned, surprised by the sudden change in odds. I could have attacked her then, but threatening a pony is much different than actually attacking one. I wasn't sure it had it in me to slash another pony, to draw her blood, to maim, or possibly kill. The unicorn kicked up the fallen sledgehammer and turned to face me with it, murder in her eyes. And suddenly, I found it easy to thrust the shovel spear forward. I was no longer struggling with following through on a threat. This was survival. Self-preservation, and it is instinctual. It clears away the moral hesitations. And while I did not have the fighting skills of my opponent, I did have an advantage of my own. Sats. Aided by the targeting spell of my pit-buck, I sent the spear slashing across her knees, hobbling her. A second slash, this time across her face, relieved her of her weapon. The third, would be the killing blow. Except I wasn't ready to do that. Not yet.